Hello, everyone. Welcome. Really, really glad to see so many faces here in the audience. After some of these forums, it's been a question about whether people were paying attention. And so I'm really excited to see that we have so much engagement. I know we have about 20 people online as well, and I expect there to be more. So thank you for joining us here today. I'm Alyssa. I'm the chair of the school board here, and with me I have Kevin Keith, and we also have Karen Schwabe, a representative from Alstead here. We have several members who are online. So if you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, we will get this forum started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I turn this over to Kevin, who has worked with our leadership team to put together a pretty informative presentation for you all, I just want to put a few things out there. We've been through these withdrawal studies before several times, of course, most recently in 2019 and 2020 vote. We're bringing this to you today because so many people have questions still about the process, about what's going to happen, and we want to alleviate some of those questions. But the biggest thing with this withdrawal study for both Walpole and Langdon is for every voter to look at the information and determine whether it's feasible and suitable for yourself, for your families, and for your community, and then mark your vote. Nobody here is trying to tell you how to vote or what the best course of action is. It's really individual, and we ask that you take that very seriously. So we appreciate you all being here. Ask lots of questions. We do have 2 microphones set up. Even if you think you're the loudest person in this room, please do come forward. The people who are online watching can't hear you if you're not speaking into the mic. So please do come right up, tell us who you are, where you're from if you want to, and ask your questions, and we will do our very best to get everything answered. So with that, I give you Kevin Keith.
Good evening. All set? Good. As she said, my name is Kevin Keith. I am the school board representative for Langdon. I'm also a computer science professor and mathematics professor, so there's a lot of numbers involved, and I talk about numbers every day in classrooms, so I thought it would be a good idea for me to be the one presenting this. I was also involved in the withdrawal study for both Langdon and Walpole. So briefly, where does this data come from? We're going to talk about today. It comes from 3 sources mainly. The primary source is the withdrawal studies from Langdon and the withdrawal study from Walpole. If you'd like to read those are available on the SAU website. You go to the SAU website, click on committees. Under committees, there's withdrawal committee. At the bottom, I believe, there says reports, and there'll be final reports are both there. And a lot of the information comes from there. The second part of information comes from the RSAs, the New Hampshire's laws. And we try to reference those wherever they're being brought in. And the third source of information comes from our district attorneys. You can imagine that people are going to make the most money out of a withdrawal if it happens are going to be lawyers, because there's a lot of legal processes that have to be followed. So where it's there, I'll point that out. Okay. So quick history of how this happened. So we did put out a survey. Misty put out a survey a week ago, right? And we had over 200 responses. And one of the questions that came up is, why is the school board doing this? And I just want to point out that this is not the school board initiating this action. This first started in 2024. The town of Walpole initiated an informal study to see if they thought they wanted to pursue withdrawal. And then March of 2025, both the towns of Walpole and Langdon at town meeting voted to move forward with the withdrawal study. A withdrawal study is a very specific thing that we do, RSA 195.25. It's very limited in what we actually are, the questions that we're asked to do, what we're actually asked to look at. So it's not really a plan of how, if we're going to withdraw, these are all the steps that are going to happen if we withdraw. It is a study to determine if it's feasible and suitable. And that's that was the bar we had to set. and looking at numbers, at looking at schools, and looking at making sure we had education for our students. So that passed in March of 2025. Immediately, we had to create the Withdrawal Study Committee. That Withdrawal Study Committee was made up of one member from every school board member from every town in the district, so 5 members from that, and also one select board member from each of the 5 towns. So there were 10 of us in total. We went through that. We had 180 days. By law, we are allowed 180 days to start the study, to end the study, and present that report to the state. We did that, and we went before the state in December of 2025, State Board of Education. We happened to meet down in Keene instead of Concord, which was convenient for us. We presented that, and they approved moving the withdrawal question to the voters. So kind of a timeline, what happens after? So on March 10th will be the district vote, and that will be by ballot this time, not town meeting. It'll be on the school board ballot. It passes in either town. Immediately, we have to form those new districts. And they'll have from about March 2026 to June 30th, 2027 to get everything in order, because they will take over their new district and start educating their children in their new district on July 1st, 2027. So these are the warrants that are going to show on the March 10th ballot. It is standard language that comes right from the RSAs. The biggest question we got in previously, well, why does it say pre-existing district of Langdon on pre-existing district of Walpole? Well, they were pre-existing prior to, we've been a cooperative since the 1960s, but before the 1960s, they were their own district. So they were pre-existing, and we became a cooperative then. So like I said, that language is very specific, and that's exactly what you'll see on the warrant. Although I think the order is Walpole's is first and Langdon's is second. So there are 5 different scenarios for how it passes or it does not pass. And 2 of them are fairly easy. The last one gets a little more complicated. So when you see these dials represent a yes vote. And if in the withdrawing town, less than a simple majority, so a simple majority is between 50 and 60%. So if less than a simple majority votes yes in the withdrawing town, so just Langdon or just Walpole, then the withdrawal fails in that town. No matter what the rest of the district says, if all other 4 towns say 100%, yes, we want you to go, they don't have to go, they get to stay, okay? The second one is the withdrawal passes if a simple majority in the town says yes, and a simple majority in the total district. So we calculate just for Walpole, and we calculate for all 5 towns. Same thing for Langdon, we calculate just for Langdon, they're the withdrawing town, and we collect for all 5 towns, that's the total district. If both have a majority, a simple majority that say yes, withdrawal passes. However, if we just have a simple majority of the withdrawing town saying yes, but less than a simple majority, again, between 50 and 60% of the town saying yes, and we have less than a majority of the district saying yes, then withdrawal does not pass. Now, then we get into supermajorities. So a supermajority for this vote is 60%, not 2/3, right? So it's 3/5. So if a town has more than 60% of that town says yes, they want to withdraw, that's a supermajority. If the district, though, has a supermajority that says no, then the withdrawal fails. However, if the full district does not meet that requirement, then it passes. Withdrawal passes. That's the harder case. I'm sure that lawyers will be involved in order to make sure that we have, Missy's going yes. Lawyers will be involved to make sure that we follow this exactly as it is. This is my understanding of this, and I am not a lawyer. So 5 different scenarios for how the voting will happen. So let's say that that it does pass. What do we look like then? So right now we are a single town district, although we're a cooperative. We're a single town district. If it passes in either Walpole or Langdon, we become a multi-town district. And as such, we now need a new board, a whole new set of administration, basically. So we create this SAU60 admin services, which is basically our admin team right now. And we have to have a board just for that group. Then there'll be the cooperative board, have whatever towns remain plus the high school. And then we'll create 2 additional school districts, or 1, depending on how it goes, for each of the withdrawing towns. So you can see we'll probably have to, if this does pass, there will probably be some way we'll have to add some staff somewhere, because now we have, if all the towns, both towns withdrew, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 different school boards, which have to meet all of that and have to have a clerk that knows all the rules to make all that happen. So we probably would have to add some staff to make sure that we are following all the laws. Another thing that happens if you are a multi-district SAU board, right now, since we're just a cooperative board, there's 7 of us. My vote, a Langdon member, is I have a 1/7 vote. Once you become a multi-district you have school board, you now have the opportunity to have weighted voting, which just means, so does not mean, up here, look at the top there, that Walpole has to have 24 members on the school board, on the district school board. It just means if someone says, we want weighted voting on this whatever motion, then Walpole gets 28.92% of the votes. And the cooperative members, when they add up their votes, they make up 71% of those votes. It's a little bit different if it's Langdon. Langdon only gets 4 votes. And for both, it's just the math works out. It's still 4.82 for Langdon and 28.92 for Walpole. I think the upside of that is if those 2 towns either of those 2 towns did withdraw, the cooperative would still have a larger voice in the SAU voting. How does this get calculated? It's a combination of ADM and no, it's not. This is, you get 1 vote for every 16 students, and whatever remains, if the remainder is greater than 8, you get 1 more vote. You also get, it's missing off the bottom, but you also get 3 votes if you maintain a school, or you get only 1 more vote if you don't have a school. Okay? So what's next if we pass? And this is where you're going to use your little bar thing. Yeah. What's next if we pass? So immediately those new districts are formed. We said in our withdrawal studies, it was our understanding that the select board would create those first school boards. You have to create school boards for those new districts immediately because they got a lot of work to do. We thought when we did our study that it could be that we would the selectmen would select those people to be on that school board for the first year as an interim. Turns out, talking to our lawyer, that's not probably true. But by RSA 19530, those towns will have to have a special meeting in order to elect those school board members. Langdon, according to the study, Langdon would have 3 school board members and Walpole would have 5 school board members. And then the negotiations begin about personnel, tuition agreements, especially for the 9 through 12 option. I know we have a lot of questions from parents, especially of Walpole parents, from Misty's survey, is will my students still be allowed to go to the Fall Mountain High School if we withdraw? And the answer is maybe. There is no definitive, we can't create a definitive answer because there are no school boards set up in Walpole or Langdon to negotiate that yet. So it's a cart and horse problem. So the in both reports, in both Langdon's report and Walpole's report, both of them said that they would like to send their students to the Fall Mountain Regional High School. The school board said in a letter that they are willing to negotiate for that to happen. But as you'll see later, there might be some restructuring that might need to happen if those towns withdraw, which could affect the capacity at the high school. They'll start working on their own budget because they will have to have their own budget voted on have their own budget hearing. They'll have to have their own deliberative session, and they'll have to have their own, and they'll have a vote to vote on their budget. And that's by March of that next year. So they'll have a lot of stuff in place very early. They'll also need to obtain services like transportation services. They can contract, if they want to, contract back with the Fall Mountain Regional School District for that, but it's, again, not a given. And they have other options as well. But you should remember, too, that not only includes regular transportation to our local schools, we also are by law required to provide transportation for out-of-district services. And that can be hours away from the home. They'll be in charge of their own facilities. They'll be obviously in charge of their own food services, their own legal fees, and their own information and technology. The legal fee problem is being a little bit, it's going to be, I don't know how that's going to work right away, because they're going to have a school board with no budget, but they're going to need legal help. So they're probably going to turn to their town to dip into the town's legal budget in order to get that information. All of this has to happen before July 1st of 2027. So that's when they have to be ready to go to start opening schools for students under their jurisdiction. So how does this affect personnel, faculty and staff of all of our schools? So currently, every staff member is employed by the Fall Mountain Regional School District, and they will remain a member of this Fall Mountain Regional School District. They do not belong to the schools. They are not chattel, right? They do not belong to the school. So if either school were to leave, that faculty doesn't automatically just move on to that school. They can choose to maintain their current contract. If they choose to stay with the cooperative, they will continue to have all contractual rights that are outlined in the current CBA, the bargaining agreement. If a staff member decides they want to go to the new district, they just have to apply to that district. They will have to resign from the cooperative in order to do that, make that happen. And then the successor employer comes into play. And I think by law, the new district has to honor this current CBA. Question becomes, if the CBA is up for renewal this year, what happens if the CBA doesn't pass? How does all of that work? A new thing that happened, and lawyers are funny, they don't just offer information, you have to ask the right kind of question. In Langdon, let me start over again. In order to have a teaching union, you have to have at least 10 people to do that. So we didn't think of that when we were doing the withdrawal study. That did not come up, but it came up later. So that may affect Langdon. I don't think, there would be I don't know what scenario that Langdon would have 10 teachers to be able to have the teacher union. So I don't know how any of that plays out. That would be something to ask the union to see if they had any idea what would happen if that were to come to fruition. So education, again, Walpole plans to have all of their students pre-K to 8 in their current schools. Walpole currently houses the LEAP program, which is one of our special ed programs. That, if Walpole did leave, that program would then move to one of the district's remaining schools, and still remain a cooperative program. Langdon will have to has a few more things to figure out, whether they're going to keep Sarah Porter open or close Sarah Porter, and then how they're going to negotiate placement for their students, depending on what choice they make. This does include, they'll have to have a plan in place for students from ages pre-K to age 22. So we do have students who have IEPs that remain in the school until the age of 22. Again, for grades, for high school 9 to 12, this new school board will negotiate those contracts. And that'll be the new school board of each of the individual towns, and the school board, the cooperative school board, would have to negotiate that contract, and then determine if they have capacity for those students. So some other things that came up in the study, one of those things was indebtedness. Do any of these towns have to pay any money back to the cooperative that they owe? And the answer is no. No one here owes anybody any money. The other part was transfer of buildings. The RSA states that the schools located in that town will be transferred after paying for any capital improvements. Well, we've been paying our Arkansas agreement have set it up so that since about the year 2000, each town has been paying for its own capital improvements since that point. So we figure the study group said that's been 26 years of you paying for your own capital improvements. We probably can call that one even. So all schools would transfer without any additional payment to the towns. Now that brings up the question though of the high school. The high school is located in the town of Langdon. If Langdon were to withdraw, what does that mean? And according to the law, the school has to be conveyed to that town after paying for any improvements. Well, this school was built after the cooperative was built, and we do believe that Langdon will forfeit its equity in this building, and this will remain a cooperative building. I don't think Langdon, the select board is over there. Langdon's not going to be buying a high school. Probably not. All right. All right, so what does stay the same? And this confused me when Charlestown was withdrawing. I was like, well, they're withdrawing, but they're staying in the SAU. How can they even think about doing that? They're doing that because that's the law. It's a different process to withdraw from the cooperative than it is to withdraw from the SAU. So I believe in the withdrawal study, Walpole suggests that they will be looking at withdrawing from the SAU eventually. That did not come up in the Langdon withdrawal study. So they will remain part of the SAU. And by RSA 194C4, the SAU provides these services. You can put your bar up there and you get a little bit bigger. They'll imply employment and supervision of the superintendent, or as we have a little bit different system here in this district. They'll provide the business administration and financial services. They'll provide all human resources. They'll do curriculum coordination and instructional leadership, special education admin, AP and payroll, and any other services that are statute or by statute or by agreement. So they can contract, those withdrawing towns can contract with the SAU if they want to. That's the services at a minimum that the SAU must provide. That's basic. If you're familiar with our articles of agreement right now, that's basically all method one, except for there's one person in method one, the director of facilities. Obviously each town is going to be in charge of their own facilities, so that amount of money comes out of there. So funding. So for the when the SAU board is created, this is basically just method one without the facilities director. The apportionment formula no longer applies. And there is this by law, the 50-50 formula. Oh, you're going to do it that way? Okay, that's good. And that is the one that's 50% ADM and 50% net equalized value. Now, I should have mentioned at the very beginning, the numbers that we used for the withdrawal study were the 2024-2025 budget. And we used the annual report as well to get those numbers, the 2024 annual report for numbers. So these numbers are how you would apportion all of those SAU services costs. So 7.8% to Ackworth, 13.23% to Alstead, 34% to Charlestown, 5.19% to Langdon, and Walpole 39.43. Those would change because like I know that Ackworth just went through a reassessment of their property values. They're practically, it went up a lot. And so that number, Ackworth would have a higher percentage that they'd be paying for using that 50-50 formula. Then we have the cooperative district. And the cooperative district, you can scroll down just a little bit, gentlemen, there we go. Our articles of agreement do not specify how we would reassess, how we would move the money around if a town were to withdraw. So fairly soon after that, there's going to be another meeting in order for there to ratify a new articles of agreement for the cooperative. Walpole and Langdon would, of course, be in charge of their own budgets, and they could choose to create a budget committee if they wanted to or not. But they'd be in charge of their own budgets. So we would have, there would be 4 budgets. There would be the SAU budget. We'd have to have a budget session, a budget hearing for the SAU budget. We'd have to have a deliberative for the SAU budget. We'd have to have a budget hearing for the cooperative budget, a deliberative for the cooperative. Then each of the towns would then also have to have a budget hearing and a deliberative. So a lot more meetings to go to. So let's talk about numbers. And I do want to state as well as I can that the numbers I'm going to show you are what we thought that the budgets would be. We tried to be both conservative. Both Langdon and Walpole committees tried to be very conservative in the numbers we gave you. We didn't want to try to sell anybody unicorns and butterflies by undercutting the budget to make it seem like it would be wonderful. We also didn't try not to go out too high to make sure that it was going to fail just because those budget numbers were so high. But again, these are just estimates. They are not the real budget, but you can take from that what you want. So for Sarah Porter, we decided there probably needed to be 2 different options. The first option would be to maintain Sarah Porter. But to have your own school, right now Sarah Porter has 2 full-time teachers and 1 paraprofessional. To maintain your own school, you have to have these services. You have to have a principal, you have to have a nurse, a guidance counselor, you have a special ed teacher, food services, and a librarian. So Langdon would have to figure out, now they could contract some of those services. You could have a principal/teacher, that a lot of small schools do that. But they would need to add a lot of services. Right now they share those services with Alstead. The other option then would be to close Sarah Porter. So that's why we kind of went both of those routes when we were making up a budget. So budget, there we go, the bar again. So again, this is based on the fiscal year 2020, 2024, 2025 budget. If you were to look at the annual report, the estimate for the tax rate was $17.28. That's at the very top, and that's right there, and that's starred. That was the $17.28 in the estimate tax rate per mil for Langdon. If Sarah Porter maintained a school, we estimated the budget to go from 1.3 million to 1.8 million, about a 33% increase in cost. Again, these are all estimates. It would all change based on actual numbers as we were able to actually get in there and actually negotiate contracts and figure out what we were doing. If you scroll down some, if we were to close Sarah Porter, it's still an increase from like 1.3 million to 1.6 million, about a 22.8% increase if we were to close Sarah Porter. All right. For Walpole, Walpole report did not give a tax rate, but it's not hard math to figure that out. So their 2025 budget in the annual report was 7.7 million. If you add up they had 2 different budget numbers. They had a budget number for elementary school and a budget number for high school. You add those both up, you get 11.2 million, almost 11.3 million, which is about a 45% increase for Walpole. again, based on the annual report, they had their mill rate on 2025 was estimated to be $10.30. The estimated mill rate for this budget would be $15.02. Again, completely estimates. The other question we get a lot in the questions is how is this going to affect the other towns? And I really want to stress here that these changes, these numbers I'm going to show you, we were very reticent to show these numbers because they're big. But what they do tell a story. I'm a mathematician. Numbers always tell a story. So we made these estimates based on no structural changes because the number of options we had was unlimited in order to figure out, would we close this? Would we close that? Would we move students here? What would we do with this student? We could not game all of those situations. It was impossible. So we made a choice as the committee to say we are not doing any of that. We have some, if you want to look at the Langdon report, we lay out exactly what we did to come up with these numbers. So, some structural adjustments would have to happen, especially if Walpole left. There would have to be structural adjustments within the remaining towns in the cooperative to make sure that these numbers don't happen. So again, as I say, numbers tell a story. And I want to make sure, but I show you the next pages, that you don't go, oh no, if X town leaves, my tax rate is going to be Y. The story is if X town leaves, this district has a lot of work to do to make sure that we don't pay Y dollars. Okay? So it's not, these numbers are not set in stone. So if Langdon were to leave, and we decided that we had two different scenarios, one where they tuition their students back to the district and one where they do not tuition their students back to the district. That was easy enough to figure out and to play those numbers out. So you can see if Langdon does leave and does not tuition its students back to the district, it mostly affects Ackworth and Alstead, not Charlestown and Walpole. Well, you see Walpole actually says $0. It actually came out to like 1/1000th of a cent that it changed, but not enough to hit the screen. So why Ackworth and Alstead? So Alstead, right now, because of our Articles of Agreement, Langdon tuitions some of its students into Alstead. Also, Langdon, Alstead, and Ackworth all share services like the principal, the nurse, the guidance counselors. There's a whole bunch more of those kind of positions. We share that. Langdon pays 10%, Ackworth pays 10%, and Alstead pays 80%. So that missing 10% from Langdon would have to be paid for. We can't just get rid of those positions. And that would go back out to Alstead and Ackworth. And Alstead also would lose the tuition that they receive currently from the Langdon students for pre-K, K, and 5 through 8. So that makes Ackworth's tuition rate go up, which makes Ackworth's tuition rate go up, and so Ackworth has to pay more money too. So those two factors make Ackworth go up. If you come back down, if we do not tuition our students back to the district, if we do tuition our students back to the district, it makes a much smaller difference across the towns. Again, it does affect Ackworth because now Langdon is still tuitioning its students to Alstead. Alstead is getting the benefit of that tuition money. Ackworth is not getting that benefit of that tuition money, so Ackworth kind of still stays up. All right, so Walpole. So if Walpole does not tuition its students to the district, the numbers go up. Walpole not tuitioning its students to the high school makes a bigger difference than Langdon not tuitioning its students to the high school and the middle school. So, and again, those numbers are not real. They would not be real. That would not happen. The school board would not let that happen. Like, I'm not going to be on the school board in about a month and a half, but I'm pretty sure the school board would never let that happen to its voters into the school. They would do everything they could to figure that out. But that will require everyone in this room working together to make sure that doesn't happen. If we go to the bottom numbers, if Walpole does tuition its students to the district, it makes a much smaller difference overall. And then the last one is what happens if both leave? And as expected, if both leave and they do not tuition, it makes a huge difference. If they both leave and they do tuition, it makes a less of a difference, but still a difference. Let's just sit for a moment with those numbers. Nothing more to say about them. Okay, so we did do a survey. I wanted to go through briefly those questions that came up and some of the answers that came up. So a big question was, why was this happening? If you look at the Langdon report, it was mostly due to financial reasons. Nate Chafee did say in the at the Department of Education meeting, and also Langdon was a little bit worried if Walpole left, what would that mean to them? So that was another reason for Langdon leaving. For Walpole, it seems if you read that, this comes directly from the report. If you want to read the whole thing later, it's mostly based on control around decision-making and especially around curriculum and operations of their school. Voting, how does my vote count? So all district votes count. So I know I showed you those 5 scenarios. Your vote does count, and it will, even if you're not a member of those withdrawing towns, it's important that you get out and vote whatever you think is best. And then this shows the rest of that RSA. This is the RSA, right, Misty? Basically the text from the RSA. This is also in the budget. These last few pages are in the budget digest. So you want to, is that correct? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm not making things up. All right. So another question we got a lot was, if a town withdraws, what happens to the remaining towns? The cooperative will remain. The cooperative will need to go through some restructuring. We will have to have a new articles of agreement ratified in order to be able to cruise the budget. So we probably have a meeting fairly early on because budget season starts in October, something, right? They would have to know how to proportion all that money around so we could actually get ready for the next year to create a budget. So this comes from the previous slide, what services. Again, that comes from RSA 195.30, and that's basically a restatement of that slide. What the SAU does not provide is going to be transportation, facilities, food service, legal counsel, and IT services. Time for a nice shout out to our IT guys. They are always the best about creating all of this stuff. You know, I have my lavalier and the whole thing, so it's great. All right. What does the school board structure look like? So the towns, Langdon would have, we said they could change that if they wanted to. We said 3 members. Walpole would have 5 members. That is partially determined by RSA, and the RSA tells you what kind of mix you have to have. What's kind of just missing there is that we would still have to have the SAU board, and we would have to still have the cooperative board. So we would have another new board. How would that be made up? Was that a whole separate board? Is it members from the individual boards coming to that big board to do that whole thing? I don't know. That is something we have to figure out, and it'd probably be part of that whole conversation at the same time as creating the Articles of Agreement. What happens to the tax rate? You kind of saw but we can basically say without any changes, we're probably looking at an increase in the tax rate. This comes directly from that slide. A lot of questions came about staffing. What's going to happen to the teachers that are currently in the district who teach at those withdrawing towns? What's going to happen to the teachers that are currently in the district who are in the towns or the schools that are not withdrawing? And again, everyone is currently an employee of the Fall Mountain Regional School District. You would remain that until you applied for a new position, received that new position, and moved and then resigned from the school, from Fall Mountain Regional School District. Since HR is going to be, the SAU is going to take care of HR, I'm sure that they are going, the district is going to make that process as smooth and painless as possible. They don't want to create, they're going to still be your HR people. They don't want any animosity from, even though you're a Walpole teacher, They don't want any animosity with the SAU. So they're going to make that, I'm just speaking from my heart. I know the people in the SAU office, and they're going to make that process as easy as possible for those teachers who want to move to a different school. So what happens to the high school? Again, as we laid out, we'll have to negotiate. That'll have to be negotiated by those new school boards and the cooperative school board. Who owns the high school? We talked about that. Langdon would probably have to forfeit its interest in the high school. It would remain a cooperative building. If my child is currently enrolled, can they finish their education at Fall Mountain? Again, that's a maybe, only decided after we get through all that. If you read the Walpole report, there is some talk about going to Keene. I know in some of their early negotiations with Keene was like everybody or nobody, right? So if Walpole went with Keene, that would mean they couldn't come to Fall Mountain Regional School District. But again, as I stated, based on the report, their intention is to remain at Fall Mountain Regional High School if it can be negotiated. How will this affect sports teams? Again, it all depends on who's left, if we have sports teams or not, enough people. Special ed. Special ed services are required by law. They will happen no matter what we do. Those services will be offered. What will happen to our specialized programs in the Fall Mountain School District? All those will remain. We have 3 of them. All 3, one of them is located at Walpole, one's in Charlestown, one's in Alston, right? Yes, and they would all remain in the district. The one from Walpole would move to one of our district schools. How will this affect students with special education needs attending out-of-district placements? If they're part of the cooperative or remaining cooperative, they would not be affected at all. If they are not part of the cooperative and part of the new school district, based on their IEP, they have IEPs, right? And sometimes those IEPs, help me, those IEPs state what services you have to have, right? And sometimes they even state what school you have to go to, right? And so by law, they are required to send those students to those schools. So they would be required to send them. So I don't see, in my heart of hearts, any change to special education and how we provide special education. It would still all happen. All right, thank you. We are going to start just a question and answer session. Again, please step up to the mics to do that. I don't think we have to go. Do we decide where do people say where they're from?
Yes, just give your name and the town where you're from, or if you want to tell us your position in the district, we'd appreciate it for the minutes.
Yeah. And it'll help, being close to the mic will help people who are live streaming this able to hear you. It also helps me. I suffer from CHS, can't hear stuff. So if you're close by them, if you're close up to the microphone, I might be at least hear through the speakers what you're asking. I will try to repeat to make sure I got your question correct. Before we start that, though, I do want to mention I am committed to making this process as easy as possible. So if you or people at home have a civic group, a church group, you want to do a house party, you want to come talk about this stuff, I have cleared my calendar for the months of February and March until we vote, March, whatever day that is, March 10th. If you would like to do that, just contact me, Keith at SAU60.org, and I will be glad to try my hardest to get there. I do weddings, I do bar mitzvahs, I do birthday parties. It's great. This is probably better with a glass of Chardonnay than it is just me standing here. So, all right. So if you have any civic groups that want me to come and talk to your civic group, churches that want me to come and talk to a church, I'd be more than happy to do that. It'd be the exact same presentation, but there might be more of a chance for conversation in that smaller setting. So I'll open this to questions now. If you have any questions, I will try my hardest to answer them. I am not a lawyer. This is Keith Vickers from Walpole. Not Keith Vickers, Craig Vickers from Walpole. I don't know why I call you Keith.
Craig Vickers from Walpole, as Keith said. So my first question is whether or not this was a statutory meeting that the school board was required to do by the RSA?
I don't believe it's statutory, but when we presented to the Department of Education, they asked us if we would be holding forums in order to get the information out. So information to make sure voters had the information. I'm not sure there is such thing as a public forum, a statutory public forum in the first place. Again, not a lawyer.
Okay. So just to clarify, it's discretionary that the school board hold these meetings.
I guess the discretionary, as a school board member and as someone who's invested in this process, I want this information to get out. So for me, it's not discretionary. I don't know legally if it's discretionary. You're probably trying to use legal terms on me to trip me up. I don't know those things, right? For me, it's very important that people have the information they need in order to make an informed vote. For me to not do this seems like an injustice to the process.
Not trying to trip you up, because that is what I was getting to, is it's the school board's responsibility to provide factual and neutral information to the voting public and not to influence what the vote might be. Would you both agree that that's the case?
And that's what we're trying to do here tonight. We're trying to present just facts.
And I am just making sure that that's clear, that everybody.
Yeah, and I can talk about to do that in this setting tonight would be electioneering.
Correct.
Which is, I know at least that much about law, that is a misdemeanor and against the law, right? So we're trying very hard that this not be electioneering, this just be facts.
So if the school board chooses to have a meeting where they present information that's supposed to be factual and neutral, then it would be the school board's responsibility to vet the information that they're providing to the public that in 6 weeks or so is going to be voting on this withdrawal process.
Yep. Well, that in terms of, that was the responsibility of the withdrawal study group to vet that information. We are presenting, everything here is in those withdrawal study reports. So we didn't vet it for factuality. If I ventured into that, I would get into electioneering. So we cannot offer any further numbers that were not part of that, other than what we were received from our lawyers, information we received from our lawyers.
Is it the responsibility of the school board to provide factual information?
What are you trying to get at, Keith? I'd love to move forward. What's your real question? Because I feel like I'm Judge Judy up here.
So the budget that was provided in the withdrawal report from Walpole, it's been stated clearly by that committee that it was not done really for financial purposes. The budget that was provided in there that you used did not include adequacy aid or state ed aid. So it was a gross number compared against all of the other numbers that you've provided, which were net and included aid. So the 45% increase that you have showed everybody is not factual.
And did I not say that? Did I not say that the numbers are not going to happen? So if you looked at the Langdon budget, we did take all that information into play and we kind of created that budget. The Walpole group did not do that. Falls on the Walpole group for those numbers, right?
So you were aware that the Walpole group did not include the adequacy aid.
I would say you just brought it to you. I was aware of what they have in their report. Whether I thought about that specific thing, no. I just presented the numbers that they gave us.
So can we agree that the increase to Walpole is not going to be a 45% increase when you subtract adequacy aid, state aid, and then the pooled aid for special education that goes back directly to Walpole, it would not be a 45% increase?
I would say it's being a statistician, being a math teacher and teaching stats. I would say there's probably a high probability that those numbers are going to be different than the numbers that are up here. Are they going to be less or are they going to be greater? I am not going to take a stand on that because again, if I were Emperor of New Hampshire and I had the ability to set up this process, What I would have done, the laws I would have is that you would create a school board immediately upon requesting to withdraw. You'd create an interim school board, which would have the ability to negotiate all of those real things and come up with real numbers. The feasibility and suitability process is flawed. And I think we can agree on that. It's a flawed,
yeah,
process because voters, and I agree with you, voters want much more specific numbers. But we don't have those. This comes right from the reports. This is the best thing we have. If a splinter group wants to come up and present some different numbers, they're more than welcome to do that and hold their own, but I'm just presenting what was shown in the withdrawal study.
So it's more of a third party. It's not an official school board presentation.
I don't know how you would characterize the school board voted and didn't vote to have this public forum. So I don't know where I don't know where that would fall. I'm not, again, not the clerk, not a lawyer, don't know.
Yeah, so that's clear. Now, there's also a jump from 24 to 25. So there is a built-in increase from the 24-25 budget to the 27-28 fiscal year budget that would already be there, because there was an increase to the 25-26, 27-26-27. So that's not accounted for. I just want people to understand that. Now, I'm not making a case for withdrawal or not withdrawing. I want people to fully understand, as do you, I'm sure.
Can I reply to that question for that though?
Sure.
I know very specifically, very early on, we chose the 2024-2025 budget. And we were going to work from there. And we were going to base our numbers off of there. We were never going to try to project into the future and try to, because our crystal balls just were not working. So we were not going to try to project into the future what those costs would be. I know for the Langdon report, we were very specific when we were talking about budget numbers. We looked at budget number. We took some other budget numbers. We took those budget numbers and kind of kept them at the 2024-2025 budget level. We did not do any increase for cost of living, no increase for inflation. So in the Langdon report, I can tell you 100% that those numbers were kind of apples to apples if you looked at the 2024-25 budget. I was not involved in the Langdon budget, the Walpole budget. Most of the withdrawal committee was not either. So I don't know exactly what they did when they created that. They may have done what you said. They may have projected to 2027.
No, I don't think they did. I think they used the 24-25.
I think so too.
Directly from the apportionment statement. But
so what we were saying then was if we to get our time machine and go backwards to 2020-24, that budget would have been the budget we would have expected, the numbers we showed up here for that year.
Now, thank you for that too. And I will say, you guys did a really good job with the majority of, I just think, the numbers part for Walpole's withdrawal, I very much disagree with, but that's okay. As far as the articles of agreement go.
I'd like to add something to that.
Sure.
I just want to make note that the people are being asked to vote on the withdrawal reports that were put forward by those committees. And those are the numbers put forward, and that is why they were brought here today. So I want to make sure it's very, very clear why those numbers were chosen.
That we presented, why the numbers you presented were chosen as the chosen numbers.
Right. I mean, I had a feeling that you guys would say that just because that's what's in the withdrawal report, but it does omit millions of dollars in aid. So I think the public should be aware that there's millions in dollars of aid that will reduce what is in that withdrawal report. So if either of these towns choose to withdraw and the Fall Mountain Regional School District needs to write new articles of agreement, and you may not know the answer to this, but does that open up the cooperative to renegotiate with any and all towns to write new articles of agreement to create a cooperative? Is it a recreation of a cooperative
I don't know
district?
the answer to your question. That's a good question, but I have no idea. So are you insinuating that Walpole might want to come back into the cooperative if they
Couldn't
had?
say that. I'm
Okay.
not, but I'm just curious because
Well, I think if a town has withdrawn from the, if the town has voted to withdraw from the cooperative, there is another process for joining the cooperative. And they would have to, if they decided, Mulligan, I want to do over, they would have to go through that process in order to rejoin the cooperative.
I guess
And-
that's all. Yeah. And I'm not speaking for Walpole, just any town that if you're ratifying, because you need to ratify the new articles of agreement, is that still based on a supermajority vote?
Oh, yeah. All the RSAs involved in changing articles of agreement would
So the
still
remaining towns would need to,
vote to change that, yeah.
even though there technically wouldn't be, or would it
Yeah,
default to
so,
the 50-50?
yeah, you're right. I don't know the answer to that question because that's, again, we're going to pay lawyers to figure that one
Yeah.
out. So because and I understand completely what you're saying, we're still a cooperative until we're not a cooperative, right? And that really changes July 1st. So what happens in the interim? Does Langdon and Walpole get to vote on the articles of agreement that they are not going to be party to? That's a great lawyer question.
Okay.
That's probably like what, $500 question, 3 hours at least.
Well,
Oh.
that's all I have for questions, but I appreciate
And
both your time and,
glad to talk to you anytime you want to have any more questions. I'm always happy to talk.
all right. Thank you.
We get Nancy first and yeah. Hi, Nancy.
Nancy Houghton from Charlestown. I'd like to assure Mr. Vickers that the figures that Walpole presented were done by Walpole, not particularly the committee, but they were done in Walpole, and you might want to go back and speak to your people.
Nancy was a
Nancy was
member
our-
of the committee as a select board member from Charlestown.
as part of the select board.
Steve Alessio, Town of Walpole, and just for transparency, I'm a selectman
Yep.
in the Town of Walpole, and I'm also on the school budget committee. Just want to point something out, going to Greg's point about the numbers. When you take the adequacy aid number out of that report or out of that, it's actually higher than the 26-27 budget that's been presented.
Hello, folks.
Hello.
Sam Edson from Walpole. If you guys don't mind if I get away from the numbers here for a second.
Sure.
As you noted in your presentation, one of the main reasons that I've heard from the Walpole folks about why they want to withdraw is for control over their education for their students. You also noted that curriculum coordination is something provided by the SAU and not the school district. Can you talk a little bit about what that means as far as what kind of control Walpole would have? Or if anybody else here can answer that a little bit, that'd be great.
Great. So the question is, Walpole asked, one of the reasons was more control of the curriculum. Part of the RSA for the minimum things that the SAU is going to offer is curriculum development and administration. I'm making that up now because I don't remember.
I think coordination was the word in
Coordination.
there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's a great question. That is going to be one of those probably negotiation kind of questions. My understanding would be that the SAU still has control over curriculum administration. That's what the RSA says. What does that mean? Walpole's going to get their lawyer, the SAU is going to get their lawyer, and they're going to come in the middle and they're going to meet. That's probably $1,000 question. So go. You want to answer, Chris? Go to the microphone, Chris. Chris, go to the microphone.
Just from my understanding, curriculum is very different than programs. When you look at curriculum from a state's point of view, there are minimum standards that have to be within each school, and those are the pieces that will be supported through the district office. As you get into programs, often you want a similar experience as they enter into a high school setting. However, there are multiple ways of meeting that, depending on how you look at things regarding strictly curriculum. Does that answer your question a little bit?
More or less what he said, that it's gonna have to get negotiated. Yeah, and it'll be a process to work through.
Definitely a process.
Okay.
Chris, would you just mind giving us your position here in the district?
Assistant Superintendent.
Thanks.
Any more questions for us?
Leroy Watson from Walpole. I'm also the Fall Mountain Regional School District Moderator. When you were explaining the process in the case of a favorable withdrawal vote from either of the towns or both of them, you talked about the process that the towns would have to go to establish a board and hold a meeting. Now, you called it a deliberative session, which implies that those districts would be SB2. Are those towns, or are those now liberated school districts required to be SB2 because A, that was what was presented to the State Board of Education, or B, because that's what the cooperative school district is at this point in time? Or do the towns have the ability to decide whether they want to have an SB2 format or a regular meeting format?
That's another lawyer question. I have no idea. Imagine they have they might, now that you bring it up, they might have a choice. I'm a novice to this whole town meeting process, and I just figured they have deliberative session. They may not. They will have to, they'll have to figure that out when they incorporate them. Well, not incorporate, I'm not doing the wrong word there again. When they set themselves up, they're going to have to figure all that kind of stuff out. That's a great question, though, that anybody who wants to be on the Fall Mountain, the Langdon School Board or the Walpole School Board should be asking that question very early on. What kind of district are we? And they can come to ask you that question about what's the difference, because that's why you're a moderator and I'm just a school board member. Any additional questions? Here comes one.
Hello, my name is Josh Beer. I'm from Walpole. I also have 2 kids who go to Walpole, and I'm a teacher here. And I graduated here in 1995. Last year around this time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the school board passed a motion to take a look at the Articles of Agreement and perhaps address maybe some of the issues that Walpole has brought up. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It wasn't the Articles of Agreement, it was a different form of organization that being a cooperative was 195.13? Go ahead.
16A.
16, yeah.
So it's a different way of structuring things. And based on what happens in March, we are still interested in pursuing that and looking at what the Articles of Agreement do, both together and separately.
Okay, that answers my question. Thanks.
We hope you're going to be a part of it.
Does everyone understand what he was asking? Do you want more information about that? I can provide some more information if you'd like. Just a head nod like this would help me. I see no head nods, so you're all set. Oh, you want to hear what I'm talking? Okay, all right. So previously, the school board talked about creating a different structure where K through 8 would be based in each town individually, and the cooperative would only cover the high school. So this would kind of fix those problems of where would my student go? They would still be part of the cooperative. So that would mean 7 school boards, because you still have to have the multi-district school board. You still have to have the cooperative school board. You have each town has their own school board. Although, you know, the Alstead district could create their own cooperative. So you get down to a whole bunch of different ways to move those little dolls around. But yeah, there are different ways to set up a district that might address some of the early questions.
Yes, hi, Wes Vickers from Walpole. I just wanted to remind everybody that on the 10th, the only thing that you're voting on is whether or not we have independent school boards in Walpole and Langdon. We're not voting on what SAU we belong to. We're not voting on what high school our kids go to. That will be up to the new school boards, if so elected. And I would also like to add that we're into year number 3. This has been a 3-year process. And Walpole had a very capable committee, which you can see their reports, but their finalized number was that the cost of education to the residents of Walpole would be relatively the same as it is today, maybe less. And if you question that, you can look at our neighbors to the south in both Westmoreland, Chesterfield, Surrey. They maintain their own SAUs and they belong to a cooperative district, and their cost per student is much less than ours. So it's just, this is just a different way to do things than we've been doing it. And I think that we can all agree it hasn't always been that easy. So maybe it's time to try something different. But that's all we're voting on is, do we form a Walpole School Board that we have control of our town, and our town will then vote what SAU we belong to. And I would have to say that if it's in year 27, 28, that it's a 50-50, we probably will not be retaining, but that's up to the school board, and you would have a vote in Walpole as to whether or not you wanted to do that. So Walpole, you'd be in total control, as would Langdon. And there are many things, again, we're looking at, just, for instance, Langdon, we all right now, we have a insurance fund. One of the things Kevin brought up was that special ed, there's an insurance fund. Each town pays into the insurance fund. My understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I understand Langdon's paid in $60,000 a year, and they've had 0 out-of-district placements in the last 10 years. So that means they've spent $600,000 and got nothing for it. So there are many things to look at. You're in control of your own town. That's all we're talking about. And I'd like to say to both of you, thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
You've done a good job.
So you just bring up a point I didn't talk about. We talked about it briefly in the reports. There are a bunch of these funds that the district has, and how those are broken up is another lawyer question, because the special ed function you just brought up is that the special ed trust fund is very tightly tied down, and unraveling that will require a bunch of lawyers to do that. So there will be, there's a bunch of those, and that's why we have that 1 year. That's why I think the state gives us that year to figure all those things out. That's not the only fund out there that we kind of share, that we share many things, right? You can think of a withdrawal as kind of a divorce, right? And you got to figure out, who gets the dog, and who gets the pool, and who gets the hot tub, and who gets the, grandma's china, and all that kind of stuff. We got to figure all that stuff out. So it'll be a process, but we will still be neighbors, right? So if we get through that process, I'm still going to Burdick's to get tea. So any more questions? I believe we'll be putting out another poll, another survey at some point. Maybe no? Okay. Maybe not. If you have additional questions and they come up, I would be more than happy to try and answer those for you. Just kkeith@SAU60.org. I do have a day job, so I will get to them as soon as I can. But seeing no further questions, I'll turn it back over to the chair, Ms. Bascom.
I just have to send immense gratitude to Kevin for all the work he's done since April of 2025. Every committee meeting, countless hours at home running numbers and scenarios. And showing up at the SAU to help all of us understand exactly where his numbers were coming from, and a lot of conversation. So thank you, Kevin, very, very much. So thank you all for being here. So really, thank you all for being here. If there are questions, of course, thank you. So this coming Monday, right here, is the deliberative session. We ask that you come early, get comfortable, get right to the front so you can ask lots of questions about things. Is also available on Zoom. You can find the link on the SAU60 website. That's 5:30, 6:30. Thank you. I'm glad I asked. So we'll see you 6:30 here on Monday. Election day for those SB2 towns and those who are not, who will only vote on the school, is March 10th. So definitely find out what your polling hours are and be heard. So thank you again for being here, and definitely reach out to Kevin. He absolutely means it when he says he will come and talk to anyone. So we will see you all on Monday.